For $1 and was habit forming. Needless to say, my education was wasted.
I think I'm going to send John Thomas to Princeton. Their boys aren't very bright, but they're such gentlemen.
That reminds me, Mrs. Savage. May we ask you a personal question?
They're the only ones worth asking, my dear.
A little bird told us that you used to be an actress. We're bursting with curiosity. Is it true?
Well, if being on the stage makes you an actress, then I guess it's true.
Miss Willie, she's the bird Florence mentioned, told us that you'd been on the New York stage.
I wonder if we've ever seen you, Mrs. Savage.
Not unless you were quick. Actually, I was only in 2 plays. The first was Macbeth.
Macbeth! Oh, I adore Macbeth. All that blood. I sent a pint of my blood to the Red Cross once. They sent it back.
I should think you would have made a novel departure as Lady Macbeth.
I can't tell you how much I agree with you, but they cast me as a witch.
But you're a perfect witch!
Thank you, dear.
Oh, please speak some witch talk for us.
I can't. I didn't have any lines. If I had, it probably would have cost me twice as much.
Why did it cost you anything?
I backed the show. If I hadn't put up the money, I couldn't have played even the mute witch. But we made history. It's the first play that ever closed before the reviews were out.
Was it expensive?
Extremely, but worth it.
What a pity. Weren't you discouraged?
Bitterly. But man is by nature optimistic. If he weren't, he would eat his young. So I decided I'd write a play and star myself.
You wrote a play?
I did indeed, with a courage born of ignorance and a plot out of wedlock.
What part did you play then?
Naturally, the lead. Not Guilty, starring Ethel P. Savage.
What does the P stand for?
I haven't the faintest idea. My numerologist said I needed it in my name for luck. He was right. We ran a year.
Oh, what was the play about?
A mother who'd murdered a man and was defended by a young woman lawyer who turns out to be her own daughter. I had red hair and died in my daughter's arms every night and 2 matinees a week, just as the curtain came down and the jury whispered, "Not guilty." Oh, I've never had a better time in my life.
I gather the notices were good this time.
Well, they were sincere. But it didn't make any difference.
What did they say?
The New York Times said my play set theater back 50 years. It couldn't possibly, because I stole the plot from Madame X, and that's only 40 years old.
Wouldn't you think they'd know?
But the Wall Street Journal was wonderful. It said my play brought something new to the theater.
Money?
Oh, really, Fairy? Money isn't new.
What did Wall Street say?
It said I had a tenacious mediocrity unhampered by taste.
But that wasn't good.
It was perfect. In our ads, we simply said tenacious and unhampered.
And you ran a year?
We'd have been running yet if my daughter hadn't come home to stop me. Oh, I know I was bad, and audiences only came to laugh at me. But we both had a good time. What more can you ask? I do miss it. Oh, well. My turn is coming.
I don't think that was very nice of your daughter, Mrs. Savage. Oh, please don't, Mrs. Savage, please don't.
Fairy, what's wrong?
Look, Mrs. Savage is going to read the newspaper.
Oh, no.
I wouldn't do that if I were you.
Please give it to me, Mrs. Savage. Please.
You mustn't read it.
It will only make you unhappy.
Now, just a moment. I know what this paper is going to say, so there's nothing you can hide from me. I've just been waiting for it to happen.
Waiting for what to happen?
Why, what it says in the paper.
But we don't know what it says in the paper.
Then why were you trying to keep me from seeing it?
We have an agreement.
We never read the newspapers until they're a month old.
We find that we're much happier when we wait.
What are you waiting for?
Why, naturally we're waiting for... What do we wait for, Hannibal?
Perspective.
Peace of mind.
Security.
We believe it's easier to read about unpleasant things a month after they've happened.
It's easy when you know it's over and that nothing can be done.
My dear people, there is something in this paper that I want to know about. And I'd like to know now, not next month.
We're only trying to help you.
Yes.
Disaster is easier to digest once it's aged a little.
You're very kind, but I've made my bed, and I want to know who's in it.
We can't keep Mrs. Savage from reading the newspaper if she insists. We don't know her well enough to be rude.
Florence is right.
Well, if you read anything unpleasant, don't tell us.
No.
If there's anything unpleasant, it won't help us to know about it.
This is yesterday's paper. I want today's paper.
It's not here yet.
When does it come?
I don't know.
Is there a radio here?
Yes, right over here.
Maybe I can catch the news. Why didn't someone say there was a radio here?
You didn't ask us.
This doesn't light up. Is there something wrong with it?
I don't think so, but it hasn't any tubes.
Hasn't any what?
Tubes. Mrs. Patty steals them. She hates electricity, you know.
Nobody knows where she hides them.
Oh, dear. Dear, dear, dear. How high is that wall?
Much too high.
Easily 10 chairs high.
And I suppose no one ever leaves that great gate open.
Don't look beyond the garden, Mrs. Savage. Oh, there may be a better place out there somewhere, but if you give up all this to go look for it, you may not find it, and you'll just lose what you have.
You'll like it here after a while.
Except in January. The rooms get a little cold.
We like you already.
It isn't that I don't find you enchanting, but you...
But we what?
Please don't say anything mean. Oh, do be still.
We have to go, Mrs. Savage.
But where?
It's garden hour.
We each have a little plot, and we plant things. You can plant anything you like, vegetables or flowers.
Last year, I planted birdseed to see what would come up.
What did come up, Fairy?
Nothing. But it was a rich horticultural experience.
There's a beautiful evergreen in the center. At Christmas, it has lights on it saying, "Merry Christmas, keep out."
Come with us, Mrs. Savage. I'll show you my delphiniums.
Oh, no, you go on without me. I'll just stay here. I have some serious thinking to do.
But the buzzer buzzed. One has to obey orders.
May I ask why you're doing that?
Oh, I believe in wearing a carpet out evenly.
Oh, how prudent. I'm going to help.
But don't you have to garden?
Oh, this is more constructive.
I'll help too. We must all do our share.
Come on, boys. Many feet make light work.
Why not, Jeffrey? It's a refreshing change. Most women lead us in circles.
But I
Go ahead, Mrs. Savage. We're behind you.
didn't mean to start a procession.
Jeff, you can take leaves. Hannibal, you can have buds. Mrs. Savage can have roses. And the rest of us will step on thorns. Do you know what we're doing, Miss Willie?
Wearing out carpet evenly.
Oh, someone told you!
Didn't I hear the buzzer ring garden hour?
I didn't hear it. I think it's broken.
Fairy May, are you ashamed of yourself?
Oh, I wish I were dead!
I'm afraid this is my fault, Miss Willie.
I didn't feel like gardening anyhow.
But Florence, you've worked so hard with your flowers. Do you want them to die?
No. No, I don't want anything to die.
Oh, that's so true. Florence wouldn't hurt a fly. She catches them and puts them out the windows. Flies adore her.
I think it's time we go out to the garden. Fairy, share your seats with Mrs. Savage. Run along now.
Come, Mrs. Patty. We're going to garden.
Aren't you going with them?
I wanted to speak to you, alone.
What can I do for you?
A great deal. And it might be that I can do a great deal for you.
Are you about to offer me a bribe, Mrs. Savage?
How did you guess?
Everyone does, at first.
Still, my offer is a little different. I have the money. I will give you $20,000 to leave that door open tonight. $30,000.
Don't you like us, Mrs. Savage?
That's the most irritating response to a sound business offer, my dear. $40,000. You could be free of this place, too.
But I don't want to be free of it.
All right, $50,000. You could travel the world, see Cairo, Mandalay, the South Pacific.
But I've seen Cairo, been to Mandalay, and the South Pacific.
You have?
I had 4 years as an army nurse.
Still, you should be able to use $50,000.
Now, where would you get $50,000, Mrs. Savage? That's a fortune.
Never mind, I can get it. And, in the current idiom, 50,000 is peanuts.
I believe you, but I'm afraid I have to refuse.
Then you leave me no choice but to burn the place down.
You wouldn't do that.
Oh, yes, I would.
No, you wouldn't. There's too many people who wouldn't know how to save themselves. You'd think of them first.
If you believe I belong here, why are you appealing to my reason?
I'm not. I'm appealing to your emotions.
Well, I'm going to get out of here one way or another. It's just that bribing you would have been cheaper. Now it'll cost me a couple of million at least.
Is Mrs. Savage downstairs?
She just this moment went out to the garden.
What is her state of mind this morning?
The usual pattern. She's already offered me a bribe.
What did she offer you?
The highest yet, $50,000. The poor dear.
Did she sound confident?
Definitely manic, as if she still controlled her own affairs.
Apparently she does. Read this. I've just been talking with her children. They're practically out of their minds themselves. The senator is leaving Washington at once. He'll pick up his sister in New York, the judge in Boston, and be here by tonight.
This is the most amazing story I've ever read. When did they discover it?
I gathered this morning. They asked me to confine her to her room.
I don't understand. How could she get away with so much money?
Apparently, her husband left the entire estate to her. She's been secretly selling out control ever since.
$10 million. That's a typographical error, isn't it?
No, they had it all right.
But what could she have done with it?
As her son says, heaven knows.
Could she have spent it?
I doubt it. Will you call her in here, please? I'd better tell her what to expect.
Yes, doctor. Oh, Mrs. Savage, would you come in here, please? Dr. Emmett would like to speak with you. Are you going to place her in seclusion?
Of course not, but sometimes I wish there was a way of placing relations in seclusion. They're often much more trouble than patients.
Do you think she knows what happened to the money?
If she does, she's the only one.
Could there be a method in her madness?
Miss Willie, I find it harder and harder every day to find where reason ends and madness begins. For the moment, I must accept the presumptive evidence of her stepchildren.
Well, from what I hear, her son's record in Congress would give any good psychiatrist a nasty turn.
And the sensationalism of her daughter's 6 divorces doesn't speak too well for her emotional stability either.
You sent for me, doctor?
Yes, good morning. Miss Willie, will you help Miriam out on the switchboard? She's been deluged with calls from the papers all morning.
Yes, doctor.
Will you sit down, Mrs. Savage?
I think I know what you're going to tell me.
Do you?
I see you have the morning paper. I wondered how long it would take them to find out.